Welcome to Starbound. My name's Aram, and I'll be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new episodes of Sunspire Academy and Freyrin and Remike. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes and future series, tap Join below to become a Starbound member. Now, let's get into today's story.
Daddy, when will the stars fall?
Dr. Elian Costa looked down at his daughter's upturned face, her eyes reflecting the night sky above their backyard. Melody was only 6, too young to fully comprehend what the growing constellation of alien ships meant. The media had taken to calling them new stars to minimize panic, but children were perceptive. "They're not falling, sweetheart," he said, lifting her onto his lap. "They're just visitors from very far away."
Are they friendly visitors?
Her small fingers gripped his sleeve. Elian exchanged a glance with his wife, Nadia, who sat beside them on their picnic blanket. The question they'd all been asking since the Empire's ships first appeared 6 months ago. "We're still learning about them," he answered carefully. Later that night, after tucking Melody into bed, Elian found Nadia in their bedroom, staring at her tablet. The glow illuminated the worry lines that had deepened on her face in recent weeks.
"Another research facility hit,"
she said without looking up.
"Oslo this time."
Elian sat beside her, running a hand through his prematurely graying hair. "Any survivors?"
"Few. The pattern's the same. They target our advanced research installations first."
Nadia worked in quantum communications. She understood the implications better than most.
"They're systematically eliminating our technological infrastructure before the main assault."
"The temporal displacement project
"Is our last hope," she finished. "I know."
3 months later, the hope that had sustained them shattered like glass. The Empire's attacks intensified from strategic strikes to full planetary bombardment. Major cities fell in days. The temporal displacement facility, hidden deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, became humanity's final card to play. The temporal displacement chamber's lights flickered as another explosion rocked the underground facility. Dr. Elian Costa braced himself against a console, watching the structural integrity readings plummet into the red. Through the observation window, Colonel Reeves lay motionless beneath a fallen roof structure, his chest crushed. The blood of countless dead and dying pooled beneath him on the chamber floor. "Damn it!" Elian slammed his fist against the console. The temporal displacement experiment, humanity's last-ditch effort, needed a subject. The Colonel had been prepped for months, his neural patterns mapped and synchronized to the quantum field generators. Now, he was gone, along with humanity's final hope. The facility shuddered again. Emergency klaxons wailed as dust rained from the ceiling. The alien bombardment was intensifying. They were done playing with their food. Elian's comm unit cracked.
"Elian, are you there?"
Nadia's voice broke through the static, strained but steady despite everything. "I'm here." He pressed the device against his ear, desperate to hear her better.
"Is Melody with you?" "Yes, we're at the evacuation point, but there aren't enough ships, Elian. They're prioritizing children and essential personnel. They're saying I can go out, but..."
Static overwhelmed her voice momentarily.
"Don't think I'll make it onto this transport."
The lights dimmed further as the facility's power core entered emergency shutdown. Elian glanced at the chamber, their work of 15 years, now useless without a properly prepped subject. Unless... "Nadia, listen to me. I love you both more than anything. Tell Melody her daddy."
"Elian, what are you doing?"
He swallowed hard. "What needs to be done? The Colonel is dead. Someone has to go back."
"No, you're not prepped. The neural synchronization alone takes weeks."
Another explosion, closer this time. Part of the ceiling collapsed in the corridor outside. Elian knew they had minutes, maybe seconds. There's no time. If this works, none of this will happen. I'll find you both, I promise.
Elian, please!
You're my life. I love you. He cut the communication and sealed the laboratory doors. With practiced movements, Elian initiated the chamber's emergency protocols, overriding the safety interlocks. The quantum field generators hummed to life, drawing enormous power. Warning messages flashed across his screen.
Subject neural patterns not synchronized. Temporal trajectory unstable. Probability of successful displacement 17%.
Better odds than staying here. Elian stepped into the chamber, carefully avoiding Reeves' body. He positioned himself at the focal point of the field generators. The air around him began to shimmer as quantum particles danced across his skin. He closed his eyes and pictured Nadia's face, the way she looked on their wedding day, Melody's first steps, the three of them watching meteors from their backyard last summer before the alien ships appeared in the sky. The chamber's systems reached critical threshold. A blinding light engulfed him as reality itself seemed to tear at the seams. In his final moment of consciousness, Elian heard the thunderous sound of the facility collapsing around him and felt a surge of energy unlike anything he'd anticipated. Earth's death throes feeding into the temporal field, amplifying it beyond all calculated parameters. Then, everything vanished in white fire. Consciousness returned slowly, fragmenting across multiple states of being. Elian perceived himself stretched thin across countless timelines, witnessing the flow of human history like a river of light and sound. He had no body, no physical form to anchor him. Instead, his awareness existed as patterns of energy interwoven with the fabric of time itself. What happened to me? Understanding bloomed not as thought, but as pure knowledge. The temporal displacement had succeeded, but in an unpredicted way. The cataclysmic energy of Earth's destruction had somehow merged with the quantum field, transforming him into something beyond human. A being of temporal energy, capable of perceiving and manipulating time itself. Grief overwhelmed him as memories crystallized. Earth was gone. Nadia was gone. Melody was gone. Everything he had ever known or loved had been annihilated in the Empire's final assault. He had failed them all. Despair threatened to unravel his new existence until a revelation struck him. He could travel anywhere in time. Perhaps not to prevent Earth's destruction directly, as that point remained fixed as the moment of his creation, but he could change what came before. He could prepare humanity, make them stronger, ready for the Empire when it finally arrived. He focused his fractured consciousness, willing himself toward a single point in time. If he was to reshape humanity's future, he would begin at the dawn of civilization. The banks of the Euphrates River shimmered in the morning light as Elian materialized. His energy form coalesced, drawing matter from the environment to create a temporary physical body. The process drained him considerably, but he maintained his form with stable effort. He gazed at the simple reed huts dotting the riverside. Nearby, early humans worked primitive fields with stone tools. Children played, chasing each other through tall grass. The birthplace of human civilization, Mesopotamia, circa 3500 BCE. The sensory overload was immediate and disorienting. After existing as pure energy, suddenly having eyes to see, ears to hear, skin to feel, it was overwhelming. Colors seemed too vibrant, sounds too sharp. The scent of the river mud, the distant smoke from cooking fires, the buzzing of insects. His manufactured senses transmitted everything with an intensity that made him momentarily dizzy. Elian steadied himself against a nearby tree, marveling at the rough texture of its bark. How strange that he could remember these sensations from his human life, yet experiencing them again felt entirely new. He looked down at his hands, perfect replicas of what he once had, down to the small scar across his left palm from a laboratory accident years ago. No, millennia in the future. Time had become a peculiar concept to him now. His consciousness could perceive multiple timelines simultaneously if he concentrated, like listening to overlapping conversations in a crowded room. But focusing on this particular point in time, this specific reality, required narrowing his awareness considerably. Elian walked toward the settlement, feeling the strange sensation of soil beneath feet that weren't truly his. His newly formed body responded like flesh and blood, but he could sense its temporary nature. He was wearing reality like a garment that would eventually wear thin. A child spotted him first, pointing and shouting in a language Elian didn't recognize. Adults looked up from their work, staring at the stranger approaching their village. Elian realized too late that his clothing, or rather the clothing his mind had manifested, resembled nothing they had ever seen. An older man stepped forward, clutching a wooden staff. He spoke cautiously, gesturing at Elian's attire. Elian concentrated, letting his temporal awareness flow through him. Suddenly, the man's words shifted into meaning.
Are you a god or a demon?
Neither, Elian replied, surprised to hear his voice emerge in their tongue. I am a traveler, with knowledge to share. The elder studied him suspiciously.
What knowledge could a stranger bring that the gods have not already given us?
Elian looked at their stone tools, their simple irrigation trenches. He glanced at a woman grinding grain between rocks. With millennia of hindsight, he knew what these people needed and what they could comprehend without causing too much disruption to the timeline. I can show you better ways to channel the river's water, methods to work metal, how to preserve your knowledge in written form. The elder's eyes widened. Several days later, after Elian had demonstrated simple bronze-working techniques and the basics of a written symbolic language, they named him Anu Nasir, Heaven's Protector. He stayed with them for nearly 20 years, aging his manifested body appropriately, guiding them without revealing his true nature. When his first borrowed lifetime neared its end, Elian staged his death and disappeared, moving forward several generations to assess the results of his intervention and begin again elsewhere. Thus began Elian's journey through human history, a guardian spirit guiding from within, balancing the need for advancement against the risks of progress without wisdom. In the courts of Egyptian pharaohs, he introduced mathematical principles centuries before their time. As Imhotep, advisor to Pharaoh Djoser, he designed the first pyramid, the Step Pyramid at Saqqara, incorporating advanced geometric principles that would inspire generations of Egyptian architects. How do you see such patterns in your mind, Imhotep? The pharaoh once asked him, examining the limestone blocks being laid according to Elian's precise calculations. The gods show me harmony in numbers, Elian replied, using the explanation most readily accepted in this time. Every stone speaks to every other stone. I merely listen. In Athens, he lived as Aristoteles, not the famous philosopher, but a lesser-known contemporary who established a secondary academy dedicated to natural philosophy and observational astronomy. While the great philosophical schools debated metaphysics, Elian's academy quietly accumulated empirical knowledge about the physical world. During China's Han Dynasty, as the metallurgist Wei Lin, he introduced techniques for creating stronger steel alloys by controlling carbon content with precise temperature regulation. These methods, seemingly intuitive flashes of insight to his contemporaries, were carefully calculated advancements that Elian knew humanity could absorb without disrupting the overall timeline. Each lifetime lasted decades. Each identity aged and eventually died, allowing Elian to move on to another time, another place, another role in humanity's grand story. Sometimes he staged elaborate deaths. Other times he simply retired to a remote location before dissolving his physical form and moving forward in time. The experiences differed profoundly. Some lives brought him tantalizing connections, friendships, mentorships, even loves, that made maintaining emotional distance increasingly difficult. As Munir, court astronomer in 9th century Baghdad, he fell deeply in love with Fatima, the brilliant daughter of a court physician. For nearly 15 years, they shared a life of intellectual partnership and genuine affection. When it came time to move on, leaving her nearly broke him. He found himself lingering in Baghdad years longer than originally planned, watching from afar as she grieved, eventually remarried, and grew old, surrounded by the children he could never have given her. Only after her natural death did he finally move forward in time, carrying the weight of her memory alongside Nadia's. In Alexandria, as the elderly keeper of the great library, he ensured certain crucial texts were secretly copied and hidden before the catastrophic fire, particularly those containing advanced mathematical concepts and early scientific observations that would otherwise have been lost for centuries. During Europe's Dark Ages, he preserved knowledge in remote monasteries, working as a series of monk scribes across different orders. In the courts of Baghdad's caliphs, he fostered astronomical discoveries that would echo through centuries. The weight of immortality grew heavy. Elian formed relationships in each life, knowing always that he would outlive them all. With each passing century, he felt his humanity slipping away, replaced by something both more and less than human, a perspective spanning millennia, but increasingly detached from individual connections. Only the memory of Nadia and Melody from his true time kept him anchored to his original purpose. When his resolve wavered, he would conjure their faces from memory, reminding himself why he endured this endless existence. But as centuries stretched into millennia, even those memories began to feel like stories he had read rather than lives he had lived. The human mind wasn't designed to contain thousands of years of experiences. To preserve his most precious memories, Elian developed a ritual. Once every century, he would retreat to a secluded location, a mountain cave, an abandoned temple, a deserted island, and spend days reconstructing his original life in meticulous detail. He would manifest small objects from his past, Melody's stuffed rabbit, the asymmetrical coffee mug Nadia had made in a pottery class, his wedding ring. Each object served as an anchor for memories that might otherwise drift away on the currents of time. During one such retreat in the Himalayan mountains in the 14th century, Elian experienced a crisis of identity that nearly unraveled his entire being. After nearly 5,000 years of existence, the question struck him with paralyzing force. How much of the original Elian Costa remained? With each passing century, with each new identity assumed and discarded, was he becoming something else entirely? The temporal energy that comprised his true form seemed to develop its own patterns, its own ways of perceiving reality that had little in common with human consciousness. For 3 days, his energy form fluctuated wildly, threatening to dissipate entirely across the quantum field. Only by focusing intensely on his core purpose, preparing humanity for the Empire, did he manage to stabilize himself and continue his mission. By the Renaissance, Elian had refined his approach. Rather than living full lifetimes, he began adopting strategic identities for specific purposes. A mathematical prodigy here, an engineering innovator there. As Leonardo da Vinci's little-known apprentice, he subtly influenced the master's mechanical designs. As a consultant to Johannes Gutenberg, he ensured the printing press would spread knowledge more efficiently than would have occurred naturally. He carefully calculated the optimal trajectory for human development, intervening precisely where needed to accelerate advancement without triggering self-destruction. Throughout the Industrial Revolution, he focused on nudging humanity toward greater cooperation alongside technological progress. He witnessed wars he could have prevented, but didn't, understanding that certain conflicts, however tragic, forged alliances and understandings necessary for humanity's ultimate survival. The burden of these calculations weighed on him. Playing God meant making terrible choices, choosing which disasters to prevent and which to allow. With each passing year, Elian struggled more with his fading humanity. The detachment necessary for his mission threatened to consume his compassion entirely. Only during rare moments of stillness did Elian permit himself to truly grieve for Earth, for Nadia, for Melody, and for the man he had once been. During one such moment, standing atop Mount Fuji in 1887, he made his first attempt to return to his original time. Focusing his energy, Elian tried to propel himself forward to the moment of Earth's destruction. If he could just return with his accumulated knowledge, perhaps he could prevent it all. But the attempt failed spectacularly. He found himself bounced back violently, understanding with crushing finality that the moment of his creation, Earth's destruction and his transformation, was fixed and unreachable. The past was malleable, the future remained unwritten, but that singular moment, the nexus of his existence, was immutable. So he continued. As industrialist Thomas Blackwood in the late 19th century, Elian amassed a fortune through strategic investments in emerging technologies. He established shadow corporations and trust funds designed to preserve and grow these resources across centuries, creating a financial infrastructure that would serve his needs well into the future. By the mid-20th century, the combined assets under his various identities' control would have placed him among the wealthiest individuals on the planet, had anyone been able to connect the dots. He had guided the development of computing, material science, and energy research along paths that would eventually yield technology capable of standing against the Empire. The digital revolution particularly fascinated him. Watching humans create virtual worlds reminded him of his own ability to shape reality. During a brief stint at MIT in the 1970s, he subtly steered early networking protocols toward more robust, decentralized architectures that would prove crucial for maintaining communication during the coming conflict. The computer age also presented new challenges. As information systems became more sophisticated, maintaining multiple identities grew increasingly complex. Facial recognition, biometric identification, and interconnected databases made it harder to simply disappear and reappear elsewhere. Elian found himself needing to hack systems he had helped inspire, creating blind spots where his various personas could exist without triggering automated alerts. As the time of the Empire's arrival drew closer, Elian shifted to more direct intervention. The climate crisis of the early 21st century provided perfect cover. As governments scrambled to address global warming, Elian influenced policy through multiple channels, ensuring that new energy infrastructure would be compatible with the defensive systems he planned to unveil later. Taking the identity of Dr. Nathan Harlow, a brilliant physicist specializing in quantum mechanics, he established connections with government research programs worldwide. His reputation for breakthrough insights earned him influence in the highest scientific circles. His 2056 paper on quantum field interactions in non-standard space-time topologies was dismissed by many as too theoretical, but Elian knew it contained the fundamental principles that would eventually power humanity's defense against Imperial weapon systems.
Your theory suggests applications far beyond what you've outlined here, Dr. Harlow,
said Administrator Huan, sliding the classified proposal back across her desk.
The Defense Department is particularly interested in the weapons potential.
Nathan, or perhaps Elian, he couldn't rightly say, smiled politely. My interest lies in energy production and computational advancement, Administrator, but I understand the practical considerations.
Good,
Huan nodded.
because we're prepared to fully fund your quantum integration project with one condition: military oversight.
Exactly as Elian had anticipated. This song and dance had played out dozens of times throughout history, those with power seeking to weaponize knowledge. Sometimes he resisted. This time, he needed their resources. I can accommodate oversight, he replied, provided my core research team remains intact. The project proceeded rapidly. Over the next 5 years, Elian guided the development of quantum technologies that integrated seamlessly with advancements he had nurtured in other fields. Publicly, these breakthroughs appeared to be natural progressions of existing research. In reality, Elian was implementing designs he had conceptualized centuries ago, waiting for humanity's technological base to reach the necessary threshold. Maintaining his physical form grew increasingly difficult as he approached the temporal boundary of his origin. Each day required more energy, more concentration. Some mornings, Nathan Harlow's colleagues noticed strange visual distortions around him, momentary shimmers in the air that he quickly explained away as the effects of their experimental equipment. Then came the day Elian had been preparing for across millennia. Standing in his private laboratory, he detected the first faint signals. Quantum disturbances in the heliopause marking the arrival of scout ships at the edge of the solar system. The Empire had entered humanity's neighborhood, right on schedule. 10 years remained before the full invasion force would arrive. 10 years to implement the final phase of a plan millennia in the making. The briefing room fell silent as Nathan Harlow completed his presentation. Military officers and government officials from 12 nations stared at the projection screen, faces pale. To summarize, Elian said, the objects we've detected beyond Neptune's orbit are unmistakably artificial and utilize propulsion methods consistent with advanced gravitational manipulation. Their deceleration pattern indicates deliberate approach rather than merely passing through our system.
You're claiming first contact is imminent,
said General Okafor, her voice steady despite the implications. Not first contact, Elian corrected. First invasion. The room erupted in protests and questions. Elian raised his hand, waiting for quiet. I understand your skepticism, but the quantum signature of these vessels matches precisely with the theoretical models my team has been tracking for the past decade. They're not here for cultural exchange. How could you possibly know their intentions? Demanded a Russian official. Elian had prepared for this moment for thousands of years, crafting the perfect explanation that would justify the knowledge he possessed without revealing his true nature. The quantum communications my team detected 3 years ago weren't random cosmic noise as initially reported. We've partially decoded them. They discuss harvest protocols and resource extraction. A carefully constructed lie, but one that would serve his purpose. The following days saw the formation of the United Defense Initiative, a multinational effort to prepare for possible hostile contact. Elian's role as chief scientific advisor gave him unprecedented influence to implement technologies he had been nurturing for centuries. Planetary defense systems based on his quantum integration theories were rapidly deployed. Space-based early warning networks established a defensive perimeter extending beyond Mars. Military forces worldwide reorganized according to protocols Elian had subtly introduced through various academic papers and strategic analysis published by his previous identities. But despite everything, despite millennia of preparation, despite guiding humanity to a technological level centuries ahead of where they would have been naturally, Elian knew it wouldn't be enough. The simulations he ran privately confirmed what he had always suspected. Conventional victory against the Empire was impossible. There just wasn't enough time. As the full invasion force entered the solar system 7 years later, Elian felt his physical form beginning to fail permanently. The closer he came to his point of origin, the harder it became to maintain cohesion. Some days, Nathan Harlow appeared almost translucent, leading to rumors about experimental technology gone wrong. He let those rumors spread, providing cover for his increasingly tenuous existence. The first attacks came suddenly. Orbital facilities around Saturn were the first to go dark. The defense platforms around Jupiter followed 3 days later. Despite humanity's advanced warning and preparation, the Imperial forces moved with devastating efficiency. From his ephemeral position in the Lunar Command Center, Elian watched tactical displays showing Earth's defensive fleets engaging the vanguard of the Imperial Armada. Humanity fought valiantly, better prepared than in his original timeline, but still outmatched.
"They're breaking through the Mars perimeter,"
reported Admiral Takeda.
"Projected Earth arrival in 36 hours.
Elian felt a strange sense of déjà vu. History was rhyming, if not repeating. Despite all his interventions, humanity stood at the precipice once again. But this time, they had him, their second wave. Elian knew what he had to do, but before his final act, he had one last journey to make. Elian focused his remaining energy on a precise temporal jump, not forward to his origin point, which remained inaccessible, but sideways, into a branch reality created by his interventions. 2 years before the invasion, in a timeline where Dr. Elian Costa had never existed because the temporal experiment had never been necessary. He materialized in a park in what had once been his hometown. Unable to maintain even a semblance of physical form in this reality tangential to his own, he existed as nothing more than a distortion in the air, invisible to casual observation. Elian found her sitting on a bench near the playground, watching a young girl on the swings. Nadia looked different. Her hair was shorter, and laugh lines framed her eyes that hadn't been there in his memories. But her smile, the way she tilted her head when concentrating, these remained unchanged. The girl on the swings wasn't Melody. This child was younger, with darker hair. Beside Nadia sat a man Elian didn't recognize, his arm draped casually around her shoulders. For the first time in thousands of years, Elian felt tears that weren't physical, but manifested as ripples in his energy form. In this reality, Nadia had never known him, had never experienced the horror of Earth's destruction, had found happiness with someone else. The little girl ran up to them.
"Daddy, watch how high I can go!"
The man stood, following his daughter back to the swings. Nadia watched them, her expression content in a way Elian had only seen in his most treasured memories. She's happy, he thought. They both are. In all his calculations across millennia, he had never anticipated this outcome, that his interventions might create a reality where those he loved most found happiness without him. The knowledge was both painful and profoundly liberating. "I kept my promise, Nadia," he whispered, though she couldn't hear him. With that final connection to his humanity reaffirmed, Elian departed, returning to the primary timeline where humanity fought for its survival. The lunar command center was in chaos when Elian returned. Imperial forces had broken through Earth's outer defenses. The tactical displays showed devastation spreading across the planet's surface as the first bombardment began.
Dr. Harlow!
Admiral Takeda looked startled as Elian's glowing form appeared. Her hand instinctively moved toward her sidearm before stopping, a gesture that didn't escape Elian's notice.
We thought you'd
been destroyed with the Beijing facility,
Elian finished for her. The destruction of his last research base had been broadcast worldwide, a devastating blow to morale as one of humanity's most brilliant minds was presumed lost.
I wasn't there when it happened.
Takeda studied his fluctuating form with a scientist's analytical eye.
What are you?
Nothing of concern,
Elian deflected. His voice echoed strangely, no longer attempting to sound human.
There's no time. I need to address the Defense Council immediately.
The Admiral hesitated only briefly before nodding.
They're in an emergency session now. Some are attending virtually. Communications are spotty with the orbital platforms compromised.
It doesn't matter,
Elian replied.
They'll all hear me.
Minutes later, facing the grim-faced leaders of humanity's remaining forces, some physically present, others appearing as holograms from bunkers and command centers around the world, Elian revealed a truth millennia in the making. As he spoke, his energy form pulsed with each word, casting eerie shadows across the room.
I am not who you thought of me as. I am not Nathan Harlow. I am not even entirely human anymore.
His form pulsed with temporal energy as he released the pretense he had maintained for so long.
I am what remains of Dr. Elian Costa, sent back in time during Earth's destruction in another timeline. For thousands of years, I have lived countless lives among you, guiding humanity toward this moment. Stunned silence met his revelation, broken only when General Okafor spoke.
If you've been preparing us for thousands of years, why are we losing?
Because conventional victory was never possible, Elian answered. The Empire's technological advantage is too great, but I have prepared an alternative.
He outlined his plan quickly. The accumulated temporal energy from his millennia of existence could be released in a cataclysmic discharge, one specifically calibrated to disrupt the quantum signature of Imperial technology. The discharge would destroy him permanently, but would create a temporary vulnerability in the Empire's defenses.
Your forces must be prepared to strike the moment the discharge occurs, he concluded. You'll have minutes, perhaps seconds, before their systems adapt.
And you're certain this will work?
Admiral Takeda asked.
I've been designing their downfall since before your ancestors discovered the written word,
Elian replied with a grim smile.
Yes, it will work.
The plan was set in motion. Earth's remaining forces consolidated, preparing to launch a coordinated attack the moment Elian gave the signal. As the final preparations concluded, Admiral Takeda approached Elian privately.
Before you go,
she said quietly,
I need to know, in this other timeline, did we ever even have a chance?
Elian considered the question. Initially, he had planned to offer a comforting platitude, but looking at Takeda's resolute expression, he recognized something he had seen countless times throughout human history: the unflinching desire to face truth, however harsh.
No, he said finally. In my original timeline, the Empire obliterated Earth in less than a week. There was no organized resistance, no counterattack, just extinction.
Takeda absorbed this without visible reaction.
What was different? Why were we so unprepared?
You had no warning, Elian explained. But more importantly, you had no unity. Nations still fought among themselves even as Imperial ships entered orbit. Military resources were fragmented, defensive strategies uncoordinated. He paused, his form flickering momentarily. That's why I spent centuries subtly promoting international cooperation, creating scenarios and external threats that would force nations to work together.
The climate crisis,
Takeda said suddenly, understanding dawning.
the Antarctic Treaty System, the United Defense Initiative. You engineered all of it.
I nudged. Humanity did the actual work. Elian's form brightened briefly, the closest he could come to a smile now. That's what makes you remarkable. Not your technology or your tactics, but your tenacity, your refusal to accept defeat.
That's not really an answer to my original question,
she pressed. No, he admitted, but it's the truth nonetheless. What matters isn't what happened in my timeline. That's gone. What matters is what happens in this one. Takeda studied him for a long moment before straightening her uniform.
Well, let's make sure we don't waste your millennia of work, Dr. Costa.
The Imperial flagship Eternal Dominion hung in orbit above what remained of North America, its vast hull dwarfing the destroyed defense platforms floating like debris around it. Nearly 18 kilometers long, its design reflected the Empire's aesthetic philosophy, functional brutalism overlaid with ceremonial grandeur. Weapon emplacements protruded from its hull like horns on a massive predatory creature. Within its command center, Supreme Commander Theliv surveyed tactical displays with satisfaction. The enormous chamber, designed to intimidate with its scale, featured a central holographic projection of Earth, real-time markers showing Imperial forces advancing across every continent. Theliv's four-fingered hand, covered in iridescent scales that shifted from deep blue to purple depending on the light, manipulated the display to zoom in on burning cities.
Resistance continues to be stronger than anticipated,
noted Sub-Commander Veklan from his subordinate station.
Especially in the Asian defense perimeter.
But ultimately futile, Theliv replied, mandibles clicking in what passed for amusement among his species. They've surpassed us with their quantum field manipulators and gravitational countermeasures, I'll grant them that. The subjugation timeline has been extended by 42 hours.
The Emperor will be displeased with the delay,
Veklan observed cautiously. Theliv's head crest flattened momentarily, a sign of annoyance. The Emperor is concerned with results, not timetables. This marks the 403rd species integration into the Empire. Some resist more vigorously than others, but the outcome never changes. He turned his attention back to the tactical displays. Earth was proving more troublesome than most primitive worlds, but that only made the victory sweeter. Another primitive world brought to heel, its resources soon to be harvested for the Empire's glory.
Supreme Commander, we're detecting an energy anomaly within the command deck.
An officer's alarmed voice cut through the ordered calm. Before Theliv could respond, the air before him shimmered and tore. A humanoid figure composed of swirling energy materialized in the center of the command deck. Imperial guards raised weapons, but hesitated, confronted with a phenomenon outside their experience.
What manner of creature are you?
Theliv demanded, mandibles clicking in agitation. The energy being's form coalesced slightly, revealing a vaguely human face. Its voice resonated not through air, but directly into the minds of all present. I am humanity's second wave. Alarm spread through the command deck as the being's energy signature began to fluctuate wildly. Security protocols activated automatically, force fields attempting to contain the intruder.
Theliv backed away as monitoring systems began to scream warnings. The being's energy readings were exceeding all measured parameters.
Alert all ships,
Theliv ordered.
unknown energy weapon deployed on command deck. Initiate emergency protocols.
But it was too late. The being's form erupted in a blinding flash of temporal energy. As his consciousness prepared for final dissolution, Elian Costa experienced a cascade of memories. Every life he had ever lived, every identity he had ever worn, every moment that had brought him to this final sacrifice. The discharge expanded outward at faster-than-light speeds, washing over the Imperial fleet. Where it touched, quantum fields collapsed, propulsion systems failed, weapons went dormant, communications dissolved into noise. At that moment, as Elian's consciousness faded, he saw once more the face of Nadia in that other timeline. Happy, at peace, and for the first time in thousands of years, he felt the same. The Imperial flagship drifted powerless, its systems devastated by the temporal discharge. Across Earth orbit, alien vessels hung dead in space. The coordinated human counterattack struck with precision, targeting the suddenly vulnerable ships with everything they had left. On the Lunar Command Center's main display, Admiral Takeda watched as humanity's forces turned the tide. Imperial vessels, unable to defend themselves, were systematically disabled or destroyed. The invasion force that had seemed unstoppable mere hours ago now fought desperately for survival.
We're receiving surrender signals from 3 Imperial battle groups,
reported her communications officer.
The flagship is attempting to restore communications. Tell them we accept nothing less than unconditional surrender,
Takeda replied.
and preparation of all scientific data regarding the FTL capabilities and every fucking thing they got.
As the battle transformed into a mop-up operation, a lieutenant approached her station. Admiral, we found something you should see. It was in the secure archives, secured for automatic release today. He handed her a data crystal, labeled in Dr. Harlow's distinctive handwriting. To be opened upon victory. Hours later, alone in her quarters, Takeda viewed the recording. Nathan Harlow, or Elian Costa, as he had revealed himself, looked directly into the camera, his form already showing signs of the temporal degradation that would eventually consume him. If you're watching this, Admiral, then our plan succeeded, he began. The Empire has been defeated, and humanity has survived. What happens next will determine whether this victory means anything in the long term. The recording continued for over an hour. Elian detailed the locations of hidden caches around the world containing technologies he had developed but concealed until humanity was ready. He provided warnings about specific technological paths to avoid and guidance for adapting Imperial technology safely. Humanity now stands at a crossroads, his message concluded. You can become the very thing you just defeated, an empire built on conquest. Or you can forge something new, a confederation of equals, united not by force but by mutual benefit. The choice, as always, remains yours. The recording ended with a personal message for Takeda herself. Your great-grandmother, in another time, was a colleague of mine. In her, I saw the same determination I see in you. Trust that quality in yourself, Admiral. I trust humanity's future is in good hands. 1 century after the defeat of the Imperial forces, Earth had transformed. The reverse-engineered technology from captured vessels had accelerated human development beyond what even Elian had anticipated. Humanity had expanded throughout the former Empire's territory, liberating subjugated worlds and establishing the Confederation of Sovereign Systems, an alliance of equals against any future threats. On what had once been the National Mall in Washington, D.C., the Museum of the Temporal Guardian stood as testament to humanity's savior. The building itself seemed to defy conventional architecture. Its crystalline spires and quantum-stabilized foundations incorporated elements of recovered Imperial technology alongside human innovation. Visitors from across Earth and dozens of former Imperial worlds came to learn about the being who had altered the course of human history and, by extension, galactic civilization. Inside, interactive displays chronicled the countless identities Elian Costa had adopted throughout human history and the subtle ways he had guided civilization's development. Archaeologists and historians had spent decades piecing together his interventions, discovering his fingerprints on pivotal moments in human development. The museum's central chamber housed artifacts from his various lives, Leonardo da Vinci's sketches bearing annotations in Elian's distinctive hand, correspondence between Isaac Newton and a mysterious natural philosopher whose suggestions led to breakthroughs in calculus, a First Dynasty Egyptian papyrus depicting a god-man teaching mathematics to scribes. Most impressive was the Temporal Observatory, a massive quantum computer that used principles derived from Elian's own energy signature to create four-dimensional models of historical events, allowing visitors to witness select interventions throughout time from a perspective previously impossible for human consciousness to comprehend. Dr. Lyra Huan, the museum's chief historian and great-granddaughter of Admiral Takeda, led a group of students through the main exhibition hall. Her family connection to the events surrounding humanity's victory had initially inspired her career choice, but over decades of research, she had developed theories about the Guardian that went beyond official accounts.
What made the Guardian unique was not just his ability to move through time,
she explained to the wide-eyed students, a mix of humans and representatives from 7 former Imperial subject species,
but his understanding that humanity needed to develop naturally, with guidance rather than control. His interventions were surgical, designed to nurture our potential without creating dependence.
A young Nelvari human student, humanoid but with distinctive crimson skin, raised a hand.
But wasn't the Guardian manipulating humanity by changing our development?
Juan smiled, having anticipated the question.
The distinction lies in his methodology. Consider how parents guide children. They can either make all decisions for them, creating dependency, or they can provide knowledge and occasional course corrections while allowing the child to develop independence. The Guardian chose the latter approach.
The students gathered around the holographic display showing key moments in human history where Elian had played pivotal roles, always in the background, never seeking credit or power for himself. As the tour moved to the next exhibit, Dr. Huan remained behind, studying the temporal energy detector that constantly monitored the museum. For the 3rd time that week, it had registered a faint but distinct quantum signature, one that matched no known phenomenon except the energy readings taken during Elian's final appearance. She smiled to herself, choosing to keep this observation private for now. The official historical records stated that Elian Costa had been completely destroyed in his final discharge, but Dr. Huan had studied his writings extensively and had developed a different theory. A being of pure temporal energy, intimately connected with the fabric of time itself, might not be so easily extinguished. Perhaps, having completed his mission, he had simply entered a new phase of existence, watching, still, as humanity made its way among the stars. Outside the museum, a faint distortion rippled through the air near a memorial bench, invisible to casual observation. If anyone had been able to perceive it, they might have noticed it took a vaguely humanoid shape for just a moment before dissipating on the breeze. Dr. Huan exited the museum later that evening, after the crowds had gone. She carried with her a small device of her own design, a modified quantum field detector calibrated to the specific energy signature she had been tracking for years. She had never shared her findings with colleagues, knowing they would demand peer review and public disclosure. Some things, she believed, deserved privacy. She sat on the memorial bench, the same one dedicated to Admiral Takeda, her great-grandmother. The detector in her palm pulsed with soft blue light.
I know you're here,
She said quietly to the empty air.
I've suspected for years. The quantum fluctuations are too consistent to be random.
For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, gradually, the air before her shimmered. Unlike Elian's previous manifestations, this one was barely perceptible, more suggestion than substance, like ripples on water catching moonlight.
You've been watching us,
Huan continued, her heart racing despite her academic composure.
watching what we've built from your sacrifice.
The distortion wavered, then stabilized slightly, taking on a vaguely humanoid outline. No features were discernible, but the shape oriented toward her in what felt like attention.
I won't tell anyone,
She promised.
but I wanted you to know that we understand what you did for us. That I understand.
The rippling energy pulsed once, brightening momentarily. Huan could almost convince herself she saw the suggestion of a human face within the distortion, a fleeting impression of eyes, perhaps even the ghost of a smile. Then the shape dissipated, spreading outward like fog before vanishing entirely. The detector in her palm fell silent. Huan sat alone on the bench for a long while afterward, contemplating what had just occurred. She had prepared 100 questions over years of research, yet, in the moment, they had seemed unnecessary. Some truths required no explanation. History would record that humanity's victory over the Empire came from a second wave that no one saw coming. A single man who lived 1,000 lifetimes to ensure his species would survive. What the official records wouldn't show was that, perhaps, in some form beyond human understanding, the Guardian remained eternal, watchful, at peace. But Lyra Huan knew, and somehow that knowledge felt like enough. As she finally rose to leave, she brushed her fingers across her great-grandmother's name engraved on the bench. Above her, the stars appeared. Countless worlds once ruled by the Empire, now members of the Confederation of Sovereign Systems. Worlds where beings looked up at those same stars and told their children stories about Earth, about humanity, about the mysterious Guardian who had shown them all that even the most entrenched power could be overcome. Not with superior weapons or overwhelming force, but with patience, wisdom, and a love that spanned millennia.